Alright, how's it going, y'all? So today and tomorrow are Amazon Prime Day, and there's actually a lot of really great deals out there if you know what to look for, and honestly, not all of them are listed as Prime Day deals. Some of them are just great prices on drives that actually beat out the actual Prime Day deals from other competitors. I've gone through and really been looking over listings of stuff that you actually might want to buy if you're in the home lab and just networking space and wanting to upgrade. And so I've gone through and found a bunch of options. I'll leave affiliate links down in the description below to all of these things. And right off the bat, we've got some UGREENs, and honestly, UGREENs love to go on sale, and these are honestly quite solid prices. I've got a review coming out, Synology versus UGREEN, and is a very solid beginner platform. It's not got everything finished up just yet, though they have added in snapshots finally as of the most recent update, and so UGREEN NAS Sync is really moving along quite well. And if you're somebody who's looking to build that really powerful Plex server and really want to learn about tinkering and things like that, UGREEN has a platform that's really solid for that. I've got this 2-bay right here that I bought with my own money. They've not sponsored anything. And they've got two really solid units on Prime Day deals right now, as well as more if you just look. They've got their 4-bay DXP 4800, which is a really solid unit. Plus, it does have an internal SSD as the boot drive, which you can install something like TrueNAS on if you're looking for just a really solid package, and I will be having a tutorial on that later on, and this is a great deal. And their 8-bay is also about $100 off. This $1,500 is not something I've actually seen it going for on retail. I would say I've seen it going for $1,300, pretty common, but you know how Prime Day deals are. But both of these are very solid units. And one of the advantages to these units is you don't have to buy Synology drives. You can throw whatever drives in here you want. And because it's really just a computer, it's got an HDMI port on the back as well as just the ability to get into BIOS, means you don't have to install UGREEN NAS Sync on there. Instead, you can install whatever you want on there and have a very nice and very compact and very powerful box that is pretty much just an off-the-shelf server ready to go, which, quite honestly, is hard to do. So I'd say these are pretty solid if you're looking for a nice, clean TrueNAS build as well. I should plan on picking one of these up at some point and doing that exactly as my offsite backup. Then next up we have the hard drive space, and it's the first and really most clear example that just because something is a Prime Day deal does not mean it's a great deal. For instance, if you take the WD 16TB Red Pros, they are currently on a Prime Day deal of $280. However, if you look at their direct competitor, the Ironwolf Pro 16TB drives, they are just on a regular sale of $270. So just because something is that Prime Day deal does not necessarily mean it's the best value out there. I would definitely say that these 16TB drives, if you are looking at getting some drives, are a very good value. Even the 24TB drives are cheaper than what I paid for them about 3 or 4 months ago, so it's a pretty solid price point. Though one thing to note, with the 2025 models of Synology, you're not going to be able to use these, unfortunately. So if you are planning on going with a Synology 2025 model for your next NAS, you're pretty much going to have to buy the Synology drives unless Synology changes their policy, which I don't see them doing anytime soon. And this is not a deal or anything, but I did also see the 1825 Plus go up on Amazon. If anybody's actually seen that, I didn't think it was out in the United States yet, but please let me know if anybody's bought this in the United States yet, as I did not think it was out yet, and it's been marketed, and I've had a few people text me about it. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below if you've seen anybody buy this in the US or internationally, but it's not actually on sale, though honestly it's being sold for MSRP. But just remember, if you are buying Synology 2025 models, you have to buy Synology drives. They will let you migrate a storage pool from an existing Synology. Going on to probably my favorite section of this is the networking, because this stuff has gotten so cheap. This stuff used to be so expensive to get anything with 10 gigabit ports on it. And now these little no-name brand switches have 2 10 gigabit ports on them with 4 2.5 gigabit ports on them for $75. That is a really great deal if you're really looking to tinker around and get gear. Yes, you can get old used enterprise gear off of eBay, but this is going to draw so much less power and be so much quieter and just be these tiny form factors. And while honestly they don't have any recognizable name brand, I've actually had a lot of clients buy these and we've not had any issues with them yet. I think finally the 10 gigabit chips have finally come down in price post-pandemic, and 2.5 gigabit has just become so cheap that it's just an easy buy now. And you don't have to get the best of the best to make sure it's going to work well, because honestly, these are going to run chips and they're going to be able to forward packets at that 10 gigabit rate, which is all you really need. And so while you do have that risk, the price point makes it pretty easy. Then for people looking for all 10 gigabit, this thing is awesome. And you would not believe how much I was paying for 8-port 10 gigabit switches even 2 or 3 years ago. It is remarkable how much 10 gigabit switches have come down in price, where now you can buy one for $270. My first 10 gigabit switch had 2 10 gigabit ports on there and 8 1 gigabit RJ45 ports on there, and I'm pretty sure it was $270 when I bought it. It is remarkable how much cheaper these switches are now, and they're just so nice to have. And for $270, that is a really great deal. These TP-Link switches I've deployed with a bunch of people and had no issues, and they do auto-negotiate to 2.5 gigabit as well as 5 gigabit. If you are looking at buying 10 gigabit gear, if it's older gear, it may only be able to do 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit, because back in the day, the 2.5 and 5 gigabit standards were not there. They were added after the 10 gigabit standard. So just because a switch can do 10 gigabit does not mean it can also do 2.5 gigabit, but this one can. And so it's always worth it to double check and make sure if you are planning on using 2.5 gigabit gear, especially for something like an 8-porter where you're going to have gear that is not all just 10 gigabit. Then finally, probably the most no-brainer purchase for a lot of people, especially now that 2.5 gigabit gear is coming out and getting pretty ubiquitous, and just where switches are pretty much the same price as their 1 gigabit counterparts, are these little adapters. I've got these things honestly everywhere. This is a USB-C to 2.5 gigabit adapter, which are perfect for laptops. These things are so nice to have around because you get really fast transfer speed on a really slender profile, and it's 20 bucks. These things are absolutely great, and if you've got a wired setup with a laptop, it's an absolute no-brainer to have a couple of these around because they are so cheap and they allow you to transfer files 2.5 times faster than your standard 1 gigabit connection. And unlike really bulky, massive 10 gigabit connections, they have a very small, easy profile. If you look at 10 gigabit dongles, they are massive and honking, and they require Thunderbolt ports, they require large power draw, they've got a huge heatsink, they're not as stable. There's so many reasons why, if you're looking at a laptop like this, definitely check out these 2.5 gigabit dongles, just because they have the performance you need in 90% of cases, while being literally a tenth of the price, as well as just being easier to use overall. All right, so now we've got 2 last things to close that list, and these are 2 things that everybody should have. First off is a UPS. UPSs are great. If you've got a NAS, you really should look at having a UPS. A UPS is a battery backup, so uninterrupted power supply. Essentially, your power goes out, the NAS does not immediately die and have that hard crash that's really not great for the disks, especially when you're in a RAID. If you've just got a single drive, it's a lot more stable because you're only writing data to one disk. However, if you have something like a RAID 5, disks can get out of sync where some data has been written on one of the drives, but has not necessarily been written to the other drives. And that's one of the reasons why it's really important to have servers on UPSs, because that RAID does make it more complex to recover after a bad power loss. And that's why battery backups are great. Whenever you're looking at a battery backup, one, I would recommend go for a name brand that you know. I generally kind of try to stay on either CyberPower or APC like this. And 2, make sure it has a data port on the back. This right here is the USB serial port. If you see right here, APC does them with this really weird connection that is a RJ43 port, if I remember correctly, to USB port. I don't know why they decided to use that. I guess they were just trying to reuse their own form fittings. But what this does is this allows you to either plug it into your computer or for most of y'all, into your NAS, and the NAS and the UPS can talk. That way the UPS can say, hey, by the way, the power's out. You should go ahead and shut down before the battery runs out. So even if you're out of town and the power's out for 5 hours, everything can safely shut down on its own. And while 1500 volt amps is not a massive amount for a UPS, NASs draw very little power. NASs draw so much less power than your standard computer, unless they are custom built and have insane processors in them. So in most cases, this will power even a solid 8-bay NAS with drive spinning. But if you're trying to get this to be a battery backup for your computer with multiple graphics cards, or even now just a single graphics card, you'll probably need to get a unit with more power in it. But honestly, for NASs, which once again tend to be the most important thing to put on a UPS, these things absolutely will power just about anything. So definitely check them out if you do not have one. And when you're looking at buying them, really make sure it's got a data port on there that you can actually use to communicate with. If you look right here, this has 2 1 gigabit ports on it. Those are not data ports. Those are actually what are called a power surge ports to protect your computer from a lightning strike, charging the Ethernet port. Same thing with this coax. So just because they have network ports on them does not mean they can communicate with that network. Then the last thing, which I think is actually the single best deal out there, are these 24 terabyte drives for $260. Not even a Prime Day deal. These drives are insanely cheap. I do not know why they are this price or how they are this price, but I absolutely love external drives for backups. It is absolutely worth $260 to buy one of these things, plug it into your NAS, and tell your NAS every night anything that's changed, back up to this. Even if you don't back everything up, back up that stuff that you really cannot live without. That is something you really should sit down and do, because RAID is not a backup. And while cloud backups are even better, this 24 terabyte backup would cost you $150 a month to back up to the cloud. And so it's a great middle ground between having redundancy, but not necessarily paying a massive amount every single month for this kind of backup. So if you do not have some kind of a backup, really look at external drives. They are not necessarily a perfect backup, but they are so cost effective that they're easy to implement. And 24 terabytes for $260 is unheard of. So absolutely pick up one of these, leave it plugged in your NAS, set up the backup, and check in on it every few months or so. All right, well, that's going to be pretty much it for these Prime Day deals that I found. If you have any other questions, put those down in the comments below. And if you want to hire me, there's a link for that down in the description below. And let me know any other deals you found. I am going to keep the comment section updated and the description updated with additional deals as they come in, because these things are always changing throughout the day. So put those down in the comments below and have a good one. Bye.